Good evening. Just getting set up here. I got to share this out here. Give me a moment. Send it out to Facebook. How's everybody doing tonight? And we'll go to Twitter. Sorry about this, guys. I should have done this before I went live. Let's get my microphone in front of me here, too. Let's see if we can pull some people in here. I'm live. Come see me. All right, got that out of the way. Let's get back over here. Hey, let's go full screen. Let's close that. And we'll go full screen. Okay. So, as you can see today, I am very excited about the new news that we got a couple of days ago for Animal Crossing. I'm wearing my Animal Crossing jacket. I'm wearing my Animal Crossing hat. I've got my brand new physical copy of Animal Crossing New Horizons here, which I just picked up so that I could start a second island and have a whole new experience for when the DLC comes out. I am drinking coffee out of my Nook coffee mug. My coffee mug is sitting on my Animal Crossing coaster right next to my Animal Crossing Switch. Am I a bit of a fan? Grown-ass man who's an uber fan of Animal Crossing? Yeah, and I'm not ashamed of it in the slightest. I love this game, and I have been dying for some significant content for Animal Crossing. We've been getting these seasonal updates here and there where we get some little event like Easter eggs or, things like that. Little Christmas presents all over the place at Christmas and that sort of thing. And, that's great, but that's really not content. I completed the game, so to speak, back when it first launched in about 40 hours. I wasn't at the time all that interested in all of the extended decorating and terraforming and things of that nature. So, for me, once I upgraded my house and got my museum mostly complete and, did all the things to get KK Slider to come to the island and the credits rolled, I was kind of like, okay, what do I do now? And, messed around with moving some rivers around and that sort of thing. And I was just kind of like, I need more. I need something more. And at that point, I went and checked out Animal Crossing Pocket Camp on my phone. And, I liked a lot of what that had to offer, but it didn't really stick with it. I may go back to that again. I'm really getting obsessed. I actually just bought a copy of Animal Crossing New Leaf for the 3DS as well. I already had a copy, but I gave it to my kids, and they love it to bits, so I bought a second copy, so I now have 2 copies of New Leaf and 2 copies of New Horizons. Yeah, so guys, the DLC that was announced for Animal Crossing really, really made my day. All the free DLC, it started out kind of slow. I was like, okay, there's going to be a cafe in the museum. Okay, great. So I just go sit and drink a coffee. That's not really content. Like, when I say content, I want things to do, missions, objectives, like let's build this and upgrade that, and let's craft things and have villagers ask me to do things. And there just really wasn't anything like that in the base version of New Horizons, and now there's a bunch of new things to do. One of my complaints about the game is that it felt very small. And although I absolutely love the vibe of Animal Crossing, the peaceful, relaxing nature of just going around tending to your island, your trees and your flowers and picking weeds and stuff, it got boring after a while because there was just nothing to really do. And even the idea of buying your Nook Miles ticket and going to a distant island to forage for materials and stuff, that was great. But I really felt like they fell down on that because you basically went to the same island over and over and over again. Like, yes, theoretically, there's a handful of different islands that are auto-generated or whatever. You've got your spider island, and you've got a couple islands with different fruits on them and things like that, but they're all basically the same island. It's a very small island. They're all laid out in one of kind of two different ways. Either it's got a big island in the center, it's got a river going through it or something. Just very, very basic in terms of going beyond your own island. So now they have added this thing. I forget what the name of the character is, but he's going to have a boat at the end of your dock, and you'll be able to travel to a whole bunch of new islands now. Artificial intelligence islands, not real people's islands, because that's something, as a 43-year-old dude, I don't have any real life friends who play Animal Crossing. So I was never able to engage in all of that, going to visit my friends' islands and trading turnips and all that kind of stuff. I was never able to do that because I didn't know any people in real life who were playing Animal Crossing. So for me, now this idea that we've got this guy that's going to take us to some different islands to explore and find maybe some different types of materials, different types of fruits, and maybe some different types of fish to catch, and different bugs and things like that. It just gives you more to do. And apparently there's about a dozen different islands that he can take you to, and they have different day and night cycles. They have different weather patterns. Sometimes it could be winter on one of those islands, when it's fall on your own island. So a lot more content there I'm really looking forward to in terms of exploring. And then there's the whole Harv's Island thing. Now, I don't know, like, if you're not familiar with Animal Crossing, Harv's another NPC who's like a photographer, and he sets up his island nearby to yours, and he keeps inviting you to come over and do photo shoots and stuff. But when you go to his island, you get off the airplane or the boat dock or whatever, and his house is right there, and that's all you can do. You just go up to his house, go in the house, and mess around with photography, which, again, don't really care about photography. I'm not really interested in collecting screenshots of Animal Crossing, and I don't know what you're supposed to do with them. Print them out and put them on your wall or something. Like, I don't really care about photography. They do that a lot in games these days. It's in like so many games, the Atelier games and so many JRPGs with all this photography stuff, and I don't know who this is supposed to be for, because I want to play the game, not just look at pictures from the game. So I didn't care about Harv's Island at all. Again, I'm not really into the decorating scene any more than is necessary to raise my level with the Happy Home Academy or whatever. Okay, I've got furniture placed in the right places and colors matched. Okay, I get my my ranking with the Happy Home Academy. I'm fine. I don't really care what my house looks like. I don't really care about furniture and things like that all that much, unless there's some kind of point to it, unless there's some kind of progression. And we'll get back to that in a minute when we talk about the paid DLC. But going back to Harv's Island now, they're opening up his island. Now we can explore the rest of the island, and there's going to be more NPCs on that island, and Harv is going to be wanting to build shops and things like that on his island, and you're going to get things like new hairstyles and different shops and things like that you can interact with on his island, which is somewhere you can go for free. So it's basically an extension of your island. There's just more things to interact with, which makes me really happy because, frankly, there's just not that much to do on your island once those credits roll, unless you're into terraforming and decorating, which, I've seen some really amazing islands. People have done some amazing things in decorating their islands and making them certain themes and things like that. And, props to people who spend all that time making this perfect island paradise. But if there's not some end game to that decorating, I don't really care. So this Harv's Island thing is great. There's a couple other things that were announced with the free DLC that I'm also pretty interested in. But moving on to the paid DLC. Now, this is something that is really exciting. Now, I've never played Happy Home Academy or whatever it's called on the 3DS, but basically what they've done is they have brought that game in its entirety and more so, given it a reskin with this island resort sort of thing. But it's basically Happy Home Academy in New Horizons. So you now go to work, quote unquote. You get on a plane or a boat or whatever, and you go to this archipelago, and there's going to be 48 individual islands, and you can invite villagers. You can even use your amiibo cards to invite specific villagers that you want to come and have you design their dream home on one of these 48 islands. And beyond that, of course, there's a progression to that, to making all these villagers happy and integrating them all with each other. So you're basically creating a whole community now instead of just one island with 3 or 4 villagers on it, which is fantastic. We're going to be able to interact with potentially 50, 60, 70 more NPCs in the game on a regular basis instead of just the 3 or 4 that are normally on your island. So very much looking forward to that, in addition to all of those home design things that you'll be able to do and get access to new crafting things and new furniture and all this kind of stuff. There's also going to be some other buildings in this expansion that you'll be able to design, like a school and a restaurant and a hospital. All of that sounds super fun, and I'm really interested in checking this out. As I say, I started a new island in Animal Crossing with my new copy. It's crazy. I understand that there's some potential for cheating in Animal Crossing. I know that Nintendo really clamps down on things like duplicate saves and stuff like that. You can't have 2 different islands with the same copy of the game. So even for me to let one of my children play on my Switch, they had to set up a second profile on my Switch and then build a house on my island. And basically, they don't get the full experience of playing the game because I've already built up my island. All they get to do is just kind of mess around like the NPCs do. Maybe go, pick a few peaches off the trees or something, but they're not really experiencing the game the way it should be experienced, because they're kind of just like passengers in the situation rather than being in control of their own island. Now, I guess if you have the physical copy of the game, you can move it back and forth between 2 switches and have 2 different islands, but it doesn't work that way for the digital version of the game. For the digital version of the game, I had it on both of my switches, and it was the same island, and there was no way to change that I'm aware of without reinventing the wheel anyway, and deleting my first island. So yeah, I bought a second copy. Now I'm really enjoying starting fresh here when I am, because I'm just moving into the progression place where by the time this DLC comes out, it's going to be the perfect time. I've just recently got my museum built. I've got my first house paid off, and I'm working on my first expansion. I just got my wetsuit. I'm just about to, in the next, play session or 2, to get my expanded pockets or whatever. So I'm really at that place now where I'm really ready within the next few days or so to fully experience the DLC and work my way through the whole game. I'm so excited because it feels like this second time around now, I'm going to have a much more robust experience, because when I first played the game, some of the DLC, like the underwater swimming, didn't exist. So when I first played and beat the game, I never experienced swimming underwater and getting the sea creatures and things like that. And there were so many other things that I didn't really experience because I started playing it in March of 2020, and I had basically done everything that I wanted to by June or July. So I never really experienced any of the seasonal stuff either. It was just the vanilla game that I played and beat. So now, starting fresh, I have the opportunity coming into the Halloween season. We've got events for that coming up, and then Christmas events coming up. So a lot for me to really look forward to. And, I talk on my channel about so many different games, but at the end of the day, most of the time, I'm playing games like Animal Crossing at 2 o'clock in the morning after I get home from work. I work long hours, 9.5 hours, 10-hour days. I get home at like 1:30 or 2 in the morning, and really all I want to do is just relax and chill with that vibe. The music, have maybe a sitcom on in the background or something, watch some classic Seinfeld or Friends or Frasier or something like that on the background, something that I'm just really comfortable with. This is comfort food for me, and I think this really grew out of the pandemic. The stress that we've been going through for so long now, like 2+ years. What it was, it's been March 2020, I guess this happened now. So I guess it's been a year and a half or whatever that we've been dealing with all this crazy stuff going on in the world. And it's just been an absolute lifesaver to have this little pocket of peace and serenity in my life. And, I really haven't had the wherewithal to really dive into particularly difficult or just games that require a lot of commitment and learning curve. I've got so many JRPGs that I want to play. I love the idea of them, but you get into these games, you get 2 or 3 or 4 hours into the game, and you're just like, ugh, this just feels like work, like all of this learning curves, figuring everything out. And it's like you put it down and you pick up something like Story of Seasons, and you just do a little bit of farming, or Animal Crossing, and you just pick some peaches and maybe get on an airplane and go to another island and do a little bit of fishing or something. It's just, I don't know. There's the serenity and the peacefulness is just what I need in my life right now. And so I don't apologize for that. I'm completely happy to be a 43-year-old man who is obsessed with Animal Crossing. Do I have a problem? Maybe. Do I need therapy? No. Animal Crossing is my therapy. So, this leads us to the discussion, obviously, because this DLC is going to be available in a couple of other ways. And what we found out at the end of the Animal Crossing Direct was the details everybody's been waiting for regarding the Nintendo Online Service Expansion Pass, which was announced in the main Direct a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to take a sip of my Nook Ink coffee. Give me a sec. So yeah, this Nintendo expansion pass, the Nintendo Online thing, there has been a ton of backlash. Everybody seems to think that it is too expensive, and on the surface, I don't disagree. For what they're giving us, not including the Animal Crossing DLC, which is included in the new expansion pass. If you look at what's offered, the existing NES and SNES content and the dubious online infrastructure that we also have access to, plus things like Tetris 99, we've been getting that for $20 a year, give or take. And, to take the jump up to $50 a year, being a 150 or 200, whatever you call that, 2040, 150% increase, going from $20 to $50, and that's US dollars. Here in Canada, it's probably going to be $69.99 a year, give or take. And that is a much more significant investment. And a lot of people are pretty upset about it because they feel like Nintendo just isn't pulling their weight, and they're just asking for too much and not giving enough in return. And on the surface, I do agree. Nintendo could be giving us an awful lot more when we look back to, I think they're in this growing phase where they're trying to figure out how they can approach this streaming service angle. I think everybody is ready for Nintendo to have some kind of a Netflix-like service on the Switch where we can literally play everything from the back catalog. And honestly, if they did that, if we had Wii and Wii U games and GameCube games and like literally every first party Nintendo game that they don't have to pay somebody for the rights for, like I don't expect necessarily that every third party game from the N64 will be there. I understand that there's problems with games like GoldenEye having the 007 licensing and things of that nature, and some of the games have music in them that would require relicensing and things like that. So I get it. If they didn't have third-party games, or at least not all of them, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But look, Nintendo has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fantastic first-party titles on systems like the Game Boy Color, the Game Boy Advance. Now, maybe when we get into the two-screen stuff like the DS and the 3DS, maybe it's not practical to provide that stuff because of the two-screen setup on those consoles. Maybe it's, they would have to put too much work into porting the games over. So, I understand if they didn't maybe move some of those, but then we've got, in addition to the NES and the Super NES, which there are still tons of first party games they haven't released. Hello, Earthbound. Why is it not there? And how easy, these games have paid for themselves over and over and over and over again, and it literally costs them nothing to just put them online and let us play them. And then we always have all of these controversies around people pirating and downloading illegal copies of the games and running emulators, and that's because, excuse me, people just want to play these games. Plain and simple. And a good portion of these people would rebuy and rebuy and rebuy these games over and over and over again on multiple systems if they could. If we could go back to a system like we had with the Nintendo Wii, with the Virtual Console, or on the Wii U, or even on the 3DS, where we could really easily get our hands on a copy of a NES or Super NES game, or a game, Game Boy or whatever, and just buy it for $3 and we own it forever. I think people want something like that, but they would be willing to accept a Netflix-style service where there are literally hundreds and hundreds of games to choose from. And even if they didn't want to do that for $50, so the thing is right now, for a lot of us, we have other ways to play these games. Would it be nice to have this available on the Switch so that it's convenient and portable and handy and we don't have to hook up those old consoles? Yeah, but you know what? Most of us have a Super Nintendo or an NES or an NES Classic or a Super NES Classic, whether it's hacked or not or whatever. So many of us have a Wii with a whole bunch of these games downloaded, or a Wii U with a whole bunch of these games downloaded. So when you look at the landscape of what they're offering us right now, a bunch of NES games that we don't really care about, a bunch of Super NES games that we just don't need them. Like, sure, there's some really great games there, but we have so many other ways to play these games. So you look at NES, Super NES, N64. Again, there's some good games there in the N64 lineup. Of course, we've got Ocarina of Time, and we're going to be getting Majora's Mask in the near future. But you know what? I have better versions. They're going to be giving us the N64 versions of those games. Right up here on my shelf, I have the 3DS versions of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, both of which are better versions, arguably, although you can't necessarily play them on the TV, which kind of sucks with the 3DS. But I don't need this. Sega Genesis is kind of a joke. I mean, down the road, there could be some more content that would be cool for the Sega Genesis, but, I have the Sega Genesis Classics collection on the Switch, physical cartridge. It has 50 games on it. Like, 50 games. They're releasing, 10 on the streaming service? So, Sega Genesis, really not that interesting. I'm not interested in anything that they have to offer, and I'm not really interested in the online service either, because my internet is not great. I mean, I'm streaming to you now, but that's using pretty much the maximum bandwidth that I have. So a lot of times streaming, like playing video games online, is not a great experience for me anyway. So other than the cloud saves and the Animal Crossing DLC, there's really nothing there to entice me. However, after that whole tirade, like after me going through all this, I really kind of get annoyed at people that are talking. There's been so much back and forth on Twitter and stuff. It's been really toxic where, people are just vehemently angry about the price of this. And you know what? If you don't have other ways to play these games, if you are newer to gaming, if you're a child or a teenager who never had an N64 or a Sega Genesis or anything, I think there is value there. Is it $50 worth of value? No, but $50 is really not a lot of money. And, I've gotten into several debates on Twitter, people saying that I'm poor shaming or something, and that I'm entitled and, whatever. But $50 is not a lot of money. When you do the math on that and divide that by 365 days, it's literally 14 cents a day. Now, if you can't afford 14 cents a day, that's fine. Maybe this product isn't for you. But at 14 cents a day, or about $4.20 a month, like that is literally the price of a small Starbucks latte. I routinely spend $20 buying 3 or 4 lattes for me and my kids at Starbucks. Like, the thing people don't seem to, there seems to be a bias in the industry. And hey, Shalbrick, Twitter is a bad place. The Switch having permanent ports would be nice, but you feel Nintendo wouldn't do that. They used to do that, but I don't think they're going to anymore. I think they want to move into this streaming space, and I think that's a good idea for them, but they need to do more. So, but getting back to the money, like, just looking at this economy, what can you buy for $4.20? Like, even call it $5. What can you buy for $5 in this economy? Excuse me. If you can get access to over 100 video games for $5 for a month, and if you're actually going to use it, how could you possibly ask for that to be any cheaper? Like, nothing is cheaper than $5, except maybe a cheap cup of coffee, except, maybe like what? Even a gallon of milk is $5. Like, there's literally almost nothing other than candy at a convenience store that is less than $5 in this economy. So I don't understand what it is about gaming where people are so resentful about spending money in the gaming hobby. I've just never been that way. Like, I would literally, if Nintendo just put up a tweet and said, hey, give us your money, we want $50 a year, and just to stay afloat, we'll give you a commemorative magazine or something, I would send them $50. Like, if they want $50, it's $50. I mean, what is that? It's nothing. In this day and age, and that's not me being entitled. I mean, if you're getting something for an entire year for $50, you're talking about pennies a day. So, while I am not particularly interested in what they have to offer, I'm not prepared to say that $50 is a bad deal, especially since it seems pretty apparent that they're going to continue adding to this service. I think they've set a precedent with putting the Animal Crossing DLC in there included, and I think we're going to see more things like that, DLC and things like that, come to the service. And some people might call that gatekeeping, but they deserve to make money. Nintendo is not a charity. They're not there to give you cheap entertainment. They're there to make a profit. And as long as enough people are willing to pay that price, that's what the price is going to be. If nobody pays for it, they're probably going to bring down the price or cancel the service. If it has games like Pokemon Red or Blue, then the price can't be dropped any lower. Those games are worth $10 for ports of 3DS. So it would, you're absolutely right. And I don't understand what Nintendo is doing holding back. Like, I think they think there's a huge value to their older titles, and there is value to their older titles. And the newer they are, stuff like the GameCube games and stuff, they probably could make millions of dollars porting GameCube games individually on physical cartridges or whatever. I personally would rush out right away and pay the $60 price point for Chibi Robo from the GameCube, which is like a $500 game now. If I could buy that for $60 remastered on the Switch, I would, absolutely. But they have to decide which direction they want to go. Are they reselling individual games, or are they providing a streaming service? Because right now, some random NES and SNES games, 10 or 15 of which are actually good out of the 50 that are in there, and them drip feeding 2 or 3 games at a time every couple of months, and most of the games are crap that nobody wants to play. That's just not going to work for supporting a streaming service and getting people to jump on board. They have to move down the road of what Microsoft is doing with Game Pass, and Microsoft has given them a roadmap. Even Sony's not really doing what they need to do in the digital space with PS Plus and stuff. Like, there are some games you can get for free with PS Plus and whatever, but it's nowhere near as robust as Game Pass on the Xbox. And Microsoft has given them that roadmap, and I don't understand why Nintendo is not taking a page out of their book, because these old properties have made their money, and it doesn't cost them really a thing to put these on a streaming service. Because the minute you start putting Wii games, Fire Emblem games from the GameCube and Wii, they're the Fire Emblem game, which one is it? Path of Radiance. The one on the Wii is worth like $100. The one on the GameCube is worth like $300 or $400. If you put those on the Switch service, people are going to eat that up. They absolutely love it. Physical copies of Pokemon Red and Blue can go for $60 just used. Imagine Punch-Out or Zelda, good gold cartridges. Yeah. I think they just need to decide which way they're going. This is the problem. Like, the Switch has so many little issues that could be so much better. And, $50 is not the issue. It's what they're giving us for that $50 that's the issue. Absolutely not poor shaming anybody, but I don't think the average person out there thinks that $4 a month is all that expensive for something. I mean, most of us probably have 10 subscriptions at least coming out of our bank account every month. Most of us probably have Amazon Prime, which is either a yearly or a monthly thing, $6, $7, $8 a month. Probably most of us have Netflix, which is like $15, $16, $17 a month. Quite a few of us have Game Pass, which is like $15 a month. We may have 2 or 3 other TV streaming services. Maybe we have YouTube Premium. I know I do. So, the idea for me of adding $4 a month to that stack of subscriptions is negligible. But there's not much reason to, because I just don't need anything they have to offer except for the Animal Crossing DLC, which, frankly, I'd rather purchase and have forever rather than rent, for however long. Pokemon XD goes for like $70. Are you kidding, man? That goes for like $270. I've got it on the shelf back here. Yeah, Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, that's like here in Canada about $280, give or take, for that game, complete in box. Yeah, crazy expensive. Like, slap that on the Switch, people would eat it up. I don't understand what Nintendo is doing. If you want to create a streaming service, give us some content, especially when you have proven with collections like the Mario 3D collection that we have Mario 64. So we know we have N64 emulation, no problem. We have Mario Sunshine, so we know we have GameCube emulation, no problem. And we have Mario Galaxy, so we know we have Wii emulation, no problem. Like, unbelievable. $70 US would be about 90-ish Canadian. It's about a 20% difference, give or take. US price for Pokemon XD complete would probably be about $180, give or take. 190, something like that. I see them on eBay all the time. I don't know if I can find it right here. It's way behind me, but yeah. It's an expensive game, and Fire Emblem Path of Radiance on the GameCube, when I bought it about 6 months ago, had spiked up to $400 Canadian, which is about 300 and change USD. And I bought it at the high point. Now it's come back down to about 280, so I've actually lost about $100 of value on Fire Emblem, but I'm just glad to have it. But, you look at some of these games, these classic experiences. Like, I have a copy of, where is it? Yeah, there's the Pokemon right there. I have a copy of Wario Land. Sorry, I can't really see behind me very well. Copy of Wario Land. That game is like $100 to $120 Canadian. Like, GameCube's gone crazy. The Mario Party games, like, they're making bank on all of these new Mario Parties. I mean, the Mario Party that exists on the Switch right now has sold like 10 or 12 million copies or something, and people are really excited for Mario Party Superstars, which is coming out in the next month or whatever. Like, why aren't they putting Mario Party 6 and 7 and 3 and 4 and 5, on some kind of streaming service? That, like, Mario Party 6 and 7 are like over $100, and Mario Party 3 and 4, they're expensive too. Like, these games, people can't access them really anymore because they're priced to the point where the average person is not going to spend. Sorry, my phone's ringing in the background. The average person is not going to spend $100 on a Mario Party game. If you could have picked it up used for $20 or something, sure. But a lot of people are just never going to experience these games because they never had a GameCube back in the day. That's 20 years old now, right? So if you've got kids that are 12, 13, 14, and maybe their parents had a GameCube or something, and their parents would love to share this experience with their kids, and they can't because they're just not willing to spend $100 on a random Mario Party game. I mean, Mario Party is not exactly like, it's a super fun experience with a group of people, but it's not exactly a groundbreaking game. I mean, it's a pretty simple premise and a pretty simple game, pretty cheap game to manufacture. Like, there's not a whole lot that goes into the development of something like a Mario Party game. So yeah, I don't understand why they're not making these games available. You say a guy who works at a store called DVD and Game Exchange, and he has gold cartridges, Gale of Darkness, and even the Game Boy Advance Micro, Game & Watch. He has Game Boys, Pokemon Red and Blue, even Yellow, Gold, and Silver. And that's another thing, like Pokemon Heart Gold. I have a loose cartridge of Pokemon Heart Gold, and it's worth like $165 loose, without a case, without a manual, just the loose cartridge. Some of this stuff is just going crazy. He gives good store credit, unlike GameStop. You know what? GameStop gets a bad rap. I mean, so many of the stories that you hear from GameStop are these salty people who took shitty games in. And sure, maybe you paid $79 or $69 for your copy of FIFA 17, but 2 years later, FIFA 17 is worth like 50 cents to GameStop because nobody wants an outdated sports game. Nobody wants a last generation racing game. Nobody wants Gran Turismo 5 Prologue when they could get Gran Turismo 6 for, so a lot of these stories are these salty people who really don't understand. You realize I went to GameStop when I got my new Switch OLED. I traded in my Xbox One S 500 gigabyte, not a really valuable console at all. But they gave me $150 for the console and $30 for each individual controller. And I had 4 controllers. So I was able to get $250 for my Xbox One S towards my Switch OLED. Like, unbelievable. GameStop does pay for things that they want. I actually took another bunch of games in there from the Xbox. I took in a handful of games. They actually had a promotion on where you take in 3 games where the trade-in value is $10 or more. Excuse me. So the game is only worth $10 to them. And they would give you 1 brand new game, full price. In Canada, that's $89.99 or whatever, $79.99 plus tax comes to like $90.50 or something. So I took in 3 random games like Titanfall 2, Star Wars Battlefront 2. I can't remember what the other one was. And I got my pre-order for Pokemon Brilliant Diamond paid for free just for trading in 3 $10 games. Like, they don't pay like garbage for everything. You just need to kind of play their game and know what they're looking for. Let me see here. I bought Pokemon Soul Silver from him for $70 for a loose cartridge, and he has Pokemon Heart Gold in a box in less than mint condition. Oh, hey, Sean, you forgot I was doing this. Yeah, well, the guy gives a full refund for a broken game, and he gives it at half retail price. Okay, yeah. Yeah, Sean never sells his games. I am constantly buying and selling and refining, trying to get the perfect collection, the most curated collection possible. I fall out of love with things all the time. I was a big fan of Game Pass on the Xbox, and I was doing a lot of couch co-op gaming with my cousin, who got a girlfriend, and I never see him anymore. So the Xbox sat unused for like 6 months, and I was still buying games for it here and there when I found them cheap. But once I decided to go primarily handheld, my only real exceptions being the GameCube and the Wii and my PS3 over here, which you can't really see on camera. I'm on the fence about the PS3 too, to be honest. Like, there's a lot of stuff to love about my PS3 collection, but the sad reality is I never touch it, and I probably never will, because I'm so enthralled with my handhelds. You were making lists instead of listening to me. First game you ever owned for a console was Pokemon Black. That is such a great Pokemon game. Your dog chewed up that copy. I love that game to death and still do. Yeah, and Black and White 2 are supposed to be really great games too. I haven't played the sequels, but Kaz, my son, is a mega Pokemon streamer on Twitch and stuff like that. He is just a mega fan of Pokemon, and he's always ranting and raving about Black and Black 2 and White 2. They seem to be some of his favorites, that's for sure. So yeah, I was... for those of you who came in a little bit later, I was nerding out about how excited I was about the Animal Crossing DLC. It was showing off my Animal Crossing jacket, my Animal Crossing hat, my Nook Ink coffee cup, sitting on my Animal Crossing coaster, and I'm just this is a really special time for me now, moving forward into this first major DLC for a game that I absolutely adore. So that's kind of how I started off tonight, was just talking about that. And I wonder, how many of the people that are watching these videos care about Animal Crossing the way I do, because it sold, like, it's still selling, and it's over 30 million copies sold in basically a year. And it's, I'm curious how many of the people who interact with me love this game as much as I do, because fully, 1 in 2 to 1 in 3 Switch owners own this game, but nobody seems to talk about it. Pokemon Black is very good. Also, the Pokemon fan base is ungrateful. You feel, yeah, anytime you have a big franchise like that, you are going to have a toxic fan base. Like, there are so many of these toxic fan bases out there that I've dipped my toes into. Like, even Persona, for example, there's a whole fan base around Persona that just don't seem to be grateful for anything they get and just want to pick the game apart and shit on people for liking things that they think are not up to par from the last game. And there's so many. All right, man, see you later, Shalbrick. You're saying you'd like to care as much, but you can't get into it. If I took your approach to game pro collecting, you would sell. Yeah, I'm kind of a strange one. I don't by any means suggest that what I'm doing is the right way or the only way. It just works for me. I want to be excited about everything that I own. I want to come in here and just stare at the loveliness of my shelves and all these things that I love, whether it's my Wonder Woman and Supergirl collection. I've been trying to find these kind of statues, these nice DC statues. I only ever find at comic book stores. I've been all over Amazon and eBay trying to get my hands on more of the DC Vixens. I want a 10 to 12 inch figure of every one of the prominent DC females, like your Batgirl and your Catgirl and Harley Quinn and Catwoman, whatever. I want all of the different Poison Ivy, all of the prominent DC Vixens. I want to have a nice statuette of, and I'm gonna have to start taking some trips to comic book stores again because I just can't find what I'm looking for. Most of what I'm finding on Amazon are action figures, and that's not what I want. I want these really beautiful artistic statuettes. I collect a lot of stuff, obviously, and it's not just games, but I always want to refine and really be able to come in, put my hands on my hips, and just say, I love this. This is me. This speaks to me, to my soul, I hear you, but what happens if you find out you love something you got rid of? This happens to me and terrifies me out of getting rid of anything. Okay, let me tell you a story, Sean. I grew up with hoarders for parents. My dad would bring home junk that he found on the side of the road. He would bring home stuff that he pulled out of the dumpster at work. He would never throw anything out. When he did a construction project, all the bits and pieces of wood would go back in the garage. Our house was a disaster. It was a dump. And every 5-6 years or so, my mom would get on his case and we'd rent a dumpster and we'd fill the dumpster and get some of the garage back and he'd fill it up again. So, this is really part of kind of a baked in response to owning things that don't have a particular value to me. It extends beyond my game collection. Anything that I am not going to use in the next 6 months. I have this process where, when I start to get too much stuff, I take my least favorite things off of my shelves, whether it's in here in the studio or in my room, or whether it's in a closet somewhere. If I'm not using it, I pack it up and I put it in storage. If I have not taken it out of storage after 6 months, it's gone in the next spring cleaning. That's just the way it is, because I refuse to burden myself with all of these belongings that, even if I do want or need it later, I will repurchase it later, because the freedom from clutter is worth more to me than the potentially 10 or 20 or 50 or $100 to replace that one item here and there that, you know what I mean? Like, I have a comic book collection right now that I'm on the edge of massively decluttering my comic book collection, because I have somewhere around 2,500 to 3,000 comic books, and they're stuffed in corners all over the place. I can't interact with them because they're not nicely displayed. I don't have them organized. I used to have them all organized in a comic book collecting app called CLZ, which was just like Game Eye now that we use for video games. And at one point, I really enjoyed my comic book collection, and there are some parts of it that I do still want to own. I have a pretty impressive collection of Buffy the Vampire Slayer comic books. Literally hundreds of them, all the different runs and releases, season 8, 9, 10, 11, that they did carrying on the show after it was canceled, plus all kinds of other stuff. I've also got an impressive collection of Star Trek comic books. Next Generation, TNG, what do you call it? TOS, original ones from the Gold Key back in the 60s and stuff like that. And I don't want to sell those, but I have it's a mess and I can't even get at them because they're all stuffed into bookshelves and closets and stuff like that. And I need to get rid of all the extra filler stuff that I don't care about. So, I have about 250 Simpsons comic books, which you might have seen me taking a picture of them in some of my outros where I showed some Simpsons comic books. And, I think they're pretty cool, but, from a minimalist perspective, and if something's got to go, I think those Simpsons comics can go. And I have a bunch of other kids' comics that I bought that I enjoy the idea of, like a pretty good-sized run of the Animaniacs comic books, which, again, never going to read them. They're all mixed in with everything else, and same with Disney. I'm a huge Disney fan, as you can see on the shelf behind me. I have tons of Disney comic books, but if you can see over here, I'm now working on complete libraries of all of the Carl Barks and Don Rosa comic books from Fantagraphics in hardcover, collections, right? So a lot of those comic books, which have some financial value, I can get rid of because I just don't need them anymore. I have newer, better versions, and I'm not really concerned with, the comic books don't look good on a shelf. So they just end up slogging down all my storage areas, when these hardcovers here look fantastic. They're easy to pick up and read. They're organized nicely in volumes and things like that, so I can find a story that I want to read really easily. So I think I'm probably going to pare down my collection and basically keep my Tarzan collection, my Star Trek collection, my Buffy the Vampire Slayer collection, and pretty much thin out everything else. Well, of course, I'll keep my Asterix and Tintin stuff as well. That's down here somewhere. But yeah, a lot of this stuff just, if I'm not using it, it's just gonna go. Oh boy, we've got a whole bunch of comments I have been missing. Yeah, the things you keep aren't random. Well, the things I keep aren't random necessarily either. I mean, I buy things because I like them, and sometimes I pick something up at a yard sale, like a piece of furniture, or so a box full of books that I think I'm going to read someday, and then I don't get around to it or whatever. Repurchasing is cool, but tell that to my entire Masters of the Universe collection. Yeah, you really have to factor in resale value of an item before you get rid of it. And I'm not suggesting that you throw it in the garbage necessarily. And if it means something to you and you're interacting with it, there's nothing wrong with having it. This is just me. I live in a small space, and I just don't have the room to infinitely continue to add to my collection, but I love shopping. I'm a shopaholic. I thrift, I'm out every weekend at thrift stores and pawn shops, and stuff is constantly coming into the studio, and something has to leave. So I'm constantly doing this juggling act of what is the coolest item that deserves to stay on the shelf, and the lesser items, they move down to the bottom of the shelf, and eventually they find a new home, whether I sell them for a profit or whether I store them or give them to somebody who likes them better. I don't know. Cost you hundreds and hundreds to rebuy your TMNT comics. I regret that I stopped buying the comics. What you have done is slowed down the current and future collecting while enjoying the collections you have. What is the point of collecting if you will get rid of it? Well, for me, it's about having that ultimate representation of my personality in this space. I want to be able to have a guest come over. Like, say you come to visit me someday, Sean. I want you to be able to come into my space, look around, and say, "This is uniquely Aaron. This is my buddy. This is everything that my buddy cares about." And there's no extra fluff. Everything that's here is very purposeful. And I'm not saying you don't do the same thing. Like when I came to your house, man, and I got to flip through all your binders and stuff, that was super cool. I'm not suggesting that what I'm doing is the right thing for anybody else. It's just for me. I live in a very small space, and this studio looks big on camera, but it's really probably about 8 by 10, if that. And my bedroom, which also has some collectibles in it, is probably 10 by 10 or 10 by 12 or something like that. And that's pretty much all the space that I have to myself, other than a little nook under the stairs in the basement that I can store some boxes in. So I have to be picksy choosy, you know what I mean? The juggling sounds stressful. Sometimes it's a little stressful, but I have really learned to come to peace with letting things go. It's just stuff. And the stuff that really speaks to you, when I thinned out my GameCube collection, what's great here now, let me just turn around. What's great here now is this shelf represents everything that I really care about that I own. And it's all in one piece where, I've got my bongos here, I've got, some artwork, and I've got, okay, these are my GameCube games, these are my Wii games. And my Wii is right over there. And now, I don't have all this excess clutter stretching across 3 different shelves. This is my Nintendo home console. All this stuff works on my Wii because my Wii plays GameCube games. So this shelf, this stuff goes together. It works on that Wii that's right there. And, I like the fact that it's this goes with that and it's done. You've gotten to the place where displaying is not important. Your access to it is. You're saying, no, I mean the things I get are not random, like stuff you said your dad hoarded. Yeah, I'm not saying you're a hoarder, man. For God's sakes, don't think I'm coming down on you at all. I'm just talking about my personal journey. Sometimes you don't know what the cost will be to rebuy something. I know, like, my mom is really bad for that in her old age, too. She will constantly keep things because she's afraid that she might need it someday and it might cost her money that she doesn't have or whatever. That's kind of a depression sort of mentality. I don't mean the mental health depression. I mean from the depression in the 30s and 40s, growing up as boomers, our parents and that sort of thing. A lot of them have that mentality of like a penny saved is a penny earned and that sort of thing where, you want to hang on to everything because you might need it someday. And, there is merit to that too, if you have the space and if you can keep it from turning into a hoarding problem. If you can keep it organized and keep it accessible. For me, with the space I have, my comic books are not accessible. I've got a couple hundred right here in the studio on a small bookshelf beside my TV, and that's mostly my Disney stuff. But other than that, the other couple thousand are all stuffed in closets, and they're all, spine out, right? Stacked in rows. So there's no way I can even see the cover art to know which book is which or where to find which part of the collection. It's not organized properly at all. So that's kind of a winter project for me, is to massively overhaul the comic book collection and make a way for it to be accessible, whether I put them in some small short comic book boxes that are, themed to different sets or something and have them accessible somewhere. I'm not really sure what to do. The juggling sounds stressful. It's not really. That letting go is a powerful skill. I don't want that kind of power or responsibility that comes with it. Yeah. Letting go is something I've had to do a lot because, for those of you who don't know me, like Sean knows me, I have come and gone back and forth across the country about 5 times in the last 10 years. I've had to sell just about everything I own that wouldn't fit in the trunk of a car and drive across the country for work or whatever, and go out to, Edmonton for a year or even a summer season, 6 months, 8 months, something like that, and then come back here again and start all over, and then go back out to Edmonton again, because of family reasons. I had family that moved out there, my kids and stuff. So, I have lived this transient lifestyle where basically everything I own has to fit in an SUV. Outside of the furniture and stuff. So I've always had to make these decisions like, should I buy brand new bookshelves because I'm probably going to have to, donate them in 2 years when I move back to God knows where next time, right? And just take the stuff and put it in boxes and put it in my mom's attic or something like, so it's always been stressful, and it's always been this quest to have the most meaningful stuff in the smallest amount of space. You also like to be able to provide entertainment. People don't socialize anymore, but a lot of times I get games because other people like them, but I also often learn to like them too. Yeah, I did that for a long time. That's why I actually sold my Xbox One recently. I bought my Xbox One about a year and a half ago when I moved back here to play with my cousin Mike, because I wanted a more modern version to play some of the more modern Call of Duties and Star Wars Battlefront 2 and stuff that we enjoyed playing together. And then he stopped coming over, and the Xbox just sat there and sat there and sat there. And I thought, okay, well, if I get rid of the Xbox, I can put that money towards something I love more, which is the new Switch OLED I got, so it's this constant trade-off, right? I mean, I could have paid for the Switch OLED separately and put the Xbox in storage, but what good is that doing me if I'm never going to touch it again? Your next thing you want to collect is a house to contain your other collections. Yeah, man, me too. I'm constantly trying to find a way to break out of the financial situation in this province right now is, unless you make like $80,000 a year, you can't even afford to live in any kind of normal family home. All reality, you probably need two incomes in the $70,000 to $80,000 a year to really have like a proper family home in this province. And as I am single and have been for 10 years, I don't have somebody to split the load with me financially. So I've had to live in this pretty small environment, and that's just the way things go. I think you measure your success and your ability not to have to be forced to choose what to keep. You hear so much about cousin Mike. Where is this guy? Yeah, your guess is as good as mine. He got a girlfriend and a job that requires him to work like 70 hours a week, and I haven't seen the guy in 6 months. We used to game together all the time, even last year. And, before I went to Edmonton last time, like 3 years ago, he would come over, 2 to 3 evenings a week at least. Pretty much every day off that I had, he was here, and we would game for 4 or 5 hours, 2 to 3 times a week together. And that really motivated me to get through a lot of games that I don't have the motivation to do now, because I've always thought of that style of gaming more as a cooperative endeavor, right? So that's why I'm so much more into my handhelds now, because I feel like a handheld is a more personal experience for me. Somehow sitting in front of an Xbox and a big screen TV is something that I want to be sharing with someone else, and I just don't have anyone in my life to share that with at this point in time. So there is one video on my channel that features cousin Mike. You may or may not have seen it. It was called The Purge, and that's where I began my journey about a year ago of purging games that I didn't want from my collection. And he and I sat down and went through my PS1 collection and decided which games he and I would like to continue to play together in the future. And Nerd Crave, maybe the ticket to financial success. Make what explode? Sorry, what did I miss? Yeah, anyway, you can check out that video if you want to see cousin Mike. He was in a video. It was called The Purge, and it's probably about a year ago on my channel, give or take. So I am starting to wind down for the evening. We've been live for an hour and 5 minutes now, and so far the internet has not cut out, which is fantastic. I'm curious what you want me to make explode. My YouTube channel? I'm doing my best to make my YouTube channel explode. That's how these things go. Make Nerd Crave explode into a money machine. Yeah, you and me both, brother. That's exactly what I want to do. I love creating the content and stuff, but I was just thinking today, like, even if it could get to the place where the hobby could pay for itself, I don't necessarily need to make millions. I mean, making great money and actually being able to afford a home, like a real home, that would be fantastic. And that's a long-term goal. But even if YouTube could just get to the place where it's paying me $300 or $400 a month, which is probably at the 15 or 20,000 subscribers mark, then the hobby would kind of pay for itself. It would help pay for some of the games that I talk about on the channel. It would help pay for some equipment to get better, so step one, collect underpants. What am I supposed to do with the underpants? Sell them on eBay or something? Okie dokie. Well, having said all that, I'm about ready to sign off for the night. I enjoy doing these Sunday streams, and I appreciate anybody who's in the stream right now with me or watching this later. I promise I do have some content. Sean is actually helping me with some of the research for some of the content that I want to get out to you in the next few weeks, and my work schedule will be dialing back in the next 3 or 4 or 5 weeks or so to a more reasonable level where I should be able to start getting some more scripted content out to you guys. I appreciate your patience in this matter. I am pretty excited about some of these topics that I am working on and that Sean is helping me with, but they are all videos that require, quite a bit of background work and research and getting gameplay footage together and stuff like that. On average, most of these scripted videos take about 10 to 12 hours to put together each, if not a little bit more. So hopefully I'll be able to get the first one out in the next week or so, and we'll go from there. All right, guys, thanks so much for sticking around. Thanks for subscribing. If you haven't already, hit the like button. It helps out a ton. And I will see you next Sunday, hopefully, and maybe in another video. Well, we'll definitely see you Tuesday for the podcast, Sean, and whoever else is out there. If you're watching this video, we do a podcast on my second channel, Nerd Crave Plus. And that is the Beeps and Bloops podcast. And this week we've got a special guest on, and we're going to be talking about horror games because 'tis the season, 'tis the spooky season. So, all right, Sean, I'll talk to you guys later. And don't forget to check out the podcast this week. It will be episode 18, working towards the end of the season. Thanks so much, guys.